Hey guys, it's Purple Ferret here, and welcome back to another speed draw. This one was actually drawn while I was hanging out with some friends on Discord, so hopefully it's not too noticeable whenever I pause to explain story beats to them because I was drawing and I don't think I'd ever told these friends about this, so I was streaming to them via Discord so they could see, and then I was telling them about things. And whenever I would tell them about things, I sometimes would pause for a really long time to talk about it instead of drawing so I could focus on what I was telling them. But I think I cut all of that out. I will find out, and I will still end up cutting that out for you guys, so you won't find out if I did or not. Anyway, as promised in my last video, I'm going to talk as much about him and his story as I can. I might leave some things out. He's not the only character in the story, and I want to leave room to talk about the other characters in the story, particularly the other main character. I'm still going to talk a little bit about her here, but I want to focus more on his whole backstory because it is very relevant, and I also want to explain how familiars work because if you watch my last video, it's okay if you didn't, not judging. In the last video, I talked about how the owl in that video is actually him and he's a familiar. In this universe, familiars are capable of being in an animal form, a partial animal form, or just straight up human form. And I also decided that in this universe, familiars weren't actually these supernatural beings and are instead humans that made a trade-off to serve a witch or witch's family for however long in exchange for immortality, basically. Familiars are gifted by their witches these powers, and they get to keep these powers even after they stop being a familiar, but the immortality goes away whenever they stop being a familiar. Because as long as they are tied to a witch, they are immortal, aside from serious injury, but they are also more resistant to things. They are not indestructible, but they can take more damage than a regular human being could. The point is there's an incentive to be a familiar. They're not forced to do anything. They can leave at any time. Okay, so I just drew two skulls there, and that was entirely just to figure out where the face should go. It had nothing to do with him having a skull for a face. My friend thought that, and I just remembered that. It was very funny. I think the reason my friend thought that was because I said, I'm gonna redo the face real quick because I don't really like how it looks. And then I erased it and drew a skull. And then I erased that skull and put another skull. Okay, back on track now. So, familiars, just to recap, they were human. They were gifted powers by the witches they serve, and as long as they serve, they have immortality. But the immortality is not total immortality. It's just if you get injured, it's probably going to be not as bad as it usually would, and they don't age. Now to get into the actual story and not just the world building. So Ice has always served this one family of witches since he was a young man. Yes, he has white hair, but that has nothing to do with his age. That's just because his familiar form is a snowy owl. He served this family for many generations, at least 1,000 years, if not more. And all this to say, he's lived a long time. He's technically an old man trapped in a young man's body, and his service of the family actually predates another part of the family that is really old, which is a family curse. The curse is a lot like an illness, but it is distinctly not an illness. The people of the family, regardless of whether they're adopted or married in, that doesn't matter. They are affected by the curse, and the curse is basically just... It's a little bit like Final Destination where like it has like an order of where it attacks, but there's no you miss it and then it goes to the next person and it'll come back to you later thing. It will come to you, it will get you, and there's no way to avoid it. You will just die. And it's like a very slow process. Within a year or two of a symptom showing up, you know you are the next to die. In the beginning, it was more of a sad thing, but for the family, it became more of a, oh, I guess you're next. And then they spend as much time with that person as they can. They tried really hard to cure it at one point, but then curing it fell by the wayside because they had just given up hope on that and just accepted that it was a fact of their lives. And it didn't used to be this egregious with how it was killing people off, but as the family's numbers started to dwindle, people started getting taken younger and younger because witches live a long time because of magic, but when you have a curse actively killing off the members of your family, it takes those older people and then it gets to the next oldest and then it just keeps going and going. The curse always targets the oldest living family member until you get to the point where the oldest isn't even an adult yet. And it's really sad because you have Ice, who is unaffected, not because he's not considered a family member by the family, because they care for him a lot, because he could choose to leave at any time, but he stays even when there's a curse that, at first they were worried would affect him. But then they realized he's technically the oldest family member and is still alive, so clearly the curse doesn't view him as a family member. So he has to watch the people he considers family die slowly over time, which he's kind of signed up to do, but not like this. The way that he signed up to watch people die is watch them die of old age, and witches live longer, so he would get to know them for a long time before they died. And it was a large family, so there would always be someone because family trees grow outward. So he would always have someone to care for in the family until he chose to leave. But the curse takes that away from him by taking them younger and younger and younger until he's left with a preteen girl who just lost her parents and now she's next. And everyone in the family kind of knew this was going to happen, that she probably was going to be the last of their family to live and that she wasn't going to make it to adulthood, and they had all kind of accepted that reality. So it wasn't a huge shock to Ice or to the young witch, whose name is Madeline, that she was going to die really young. As much as I want to hold your hand and tell you that she defies all logic and beats the curse and they live happily ever after the end, that is not what happens, unfortunately. Unfortunately, the curse takes her and Ice is left alone, and he's not sure what he's gonna do now because the world, he's watched the world change so much. The aspirations he had for life before he became a familiar don't apply anymore. Society has just changed so much that he doesn't know where he fits in if he's not a familiar. So he doesn't know what he's gonna do with his life anymore. Luckily, he doesn't have long to think about that, because this is where the real story starts. Ice is freshly mourning the loss of his last family member. He's debating what he's gonna do with his life now. And then his last family member, who he is freshly mourning, her corpse just gets up and starts walking out the door. Her hair is now a stark white, much like his, but for a very different reason. Ice knows that this is the sign of a demon possession post-mortem. I explained at about 6 minutes in to the last video I made that Mistletoe, the demon I am referring to, is possessing the body of a dead witch, specifically because freshly dead corpses are better than even a living body is for possession. And that is because if there is a soul within a body, the soul will fight back. So the person either needs to be very willing to let you keep their body for the time being, or you want the body to be vacant. And for Mistletoe, she specifically found Madeline and realized that she was inevitably going to die very soon, and so she just waited in the shadows until she did kick the bucket. And the reason I bring this up is to say the reason her hair is white is because when you possess a corpse, the hair and eyes lose color, so they turn gray and white. And I'm sure it doesn't need to be said, because I'm sure you all would agree with him, that Ice is not fond of Mistletoe taking over Madeline's body, because that is someone he cares about. She's gone now, and then he doesn't even get a second to mourn before someone else decides free real estate and just walks away with her. And here we're actually getting to the part where the visuals on screen are actually relevant to the story because this is a representation of him following her into the night, standing in her way and saying, "You cannot take her. She is my family. Pick somebody else." And he refuses to harm Madeline's body in any way to try and persuade Mistletoe to leave. So he is resorting to only words because he does not want to hurt Madeline, even though she's gone. He does not want to desecrate her corpse. And this is the point where I was telling my friend this, and his response was, when I first saw the other drawing, I went, "Oh, poor owl," because he looked sad. And now I'm going, "Oh, poor owl," because now the story's actually sad because there's context. I'm not going to say too much else about the story other than they come to an understanding, which I'll explain when I draw Mistletoe. This understanding leaves her in Madeline's body. Ice is still not very happy about it, but he's dealing with it because of their agreement. And I'm already saying more than I told people on my Tumblr because I gave a lot of this exposition on Tumblr, but this part specifically is not on Tumblr, so YouTube gets a little bit more than Tumblr sometimes, okay? And we're at the comparison, so I need to stop talking about the story and stuff. I'm really fond of this one, even in the before, but the after I like a lot more because the contrast is higher, and I actually forgot the shadow under his wings until really late in the process, if you were paying attention. It was very funny. I was like, something's wrong about this, and I don't know what it is. And I had like a little shadow under his body. I was like, he looks like he's in the scene, but like he also doesn't feel right. And then I look at his giant wings and I go, those should have shadows under them. Anywho, I'm really glad you watched this far if you did. And I hope to see you in the next one in 2 weeks. Bye!